Yeah, PSO2 NGS will be going on for at least another 2 years, y'all. I know y'all may not want to hear this, but it's going to be the case. It's going to be going for like if however you feel about that, it's going to be going for at least another 2 years. At any rate, we had an interview from 4Gamer that was with Hamazaki, which is the director of the game. And there were some things in here that were actually pretty interesting that I wanted to discuss that really pertain to the game, to the new mechanics in it, to the roadmap, and things of the sort that they're going to be implementing here in the next year or whatnot. So I want to kind of touch on that because some of this stuff is worthwhile. And I'll also touch at the end as well how none of this actually really matters in the bigger scope of things because of the issues that are presented here. But at any rate, let's dive in here because there are some things I want to discover here. We're not going to go over the whole thing, but we're going to go over some key points. We're going to touch on those key points and talk about those key points that I believe are the most valuable things to talk about, and then we'll move along from there. But first, be sure to like and subscribe. That helps out tremendously. Thank you very much. So as you can see here, by 4Gamer, they had an interview with Hamazaki. I could go ahead and translate this for you. Just go do the auto translate instead of trying to, go through the willy-nilly of all of it. But nonetheless, they have this interview here. I guess I can zoom this in a little bit, make sure it's not cutting this off on the screen there. But we can zoom this in a little bit. I'm not going to go over all this stuff because the first part, they're really just reflecting back on, what happened in the past year. They talk about, the offline event that they had, the Arts Caravan, which they've talked about every single freaking time they have an interview. They talk about that. They talk about releasing the Mars. They're releasing Nameless City back in June of 2024. All that nonsense. I'm not caring about that stuff. Y'all can, if you really want to go into detail on this stuff, then you can go. This will be linked in the description, this article. But if you want to do that, you can. I'm not worried about that. We're just here to talk about these stuff that really, really means something moving forward in the future of the game. Of course, they have line strikers up here. They do talk about the creative space. They talk about how creative space, they're trying to look towards making it kind of more all-shipish. So that's something to note there. Also, of course, they have the Salon, which is the beauty salon. They are trying to implement chat in the salon, which is going to be implemented here in August, I believe it was, they said. But that's coming up right around the corner. They mentioned this in the NGS headline. So this isn't anything new. This is right around the corner right here. It says right here, the August update. So that's neat to have because I know a lot of y'all spend a lot of time in the salon and y'all like to have chat working in there. So that's pretty cool. But that's not what we're focused on either. This is where we're stopping at. Moving along, they did talk about here about the NGS headline and wave and why they kind of changed the title of it and whatnot. And of course, they kind of talk about here Arai and how he's the MC and how he left and it's kind of want to switch it up, give it a new vibe. This is also where they reiterate that the game is going to be going on for a long time. And that's why they renewed it, because the game's going to be going on for a long time. So that's why they kind of emphasize here. There's a possibility that people will be worried that the NGS service will also end. So. They're pretty much just saying like, yo, dude, no, that's why they did that, to remind people, no, we're going to be here for a while. So at least another 2 years, y'all, NGS will be going on 100%. But nonetheless, they talk about this, and Yui Hasegawa, who's come in with more giddy, more fun-filled, more relaxing type of vibe for the wave format and all that nonsense. But nonetheless, this isn't where we're going to be at either. We're going to keep scrolling. Now, they talk about the offline event. Yeah. This is where it gets good down here. This is where the stuff that we really want to grab into, the bulk of things of where we really want to be trying to establish what we're discussing here. So, the roadmap. As y'all are aware, I just released a video about the roadmap and how we were very iffy about the roadmap. We still are iffy about the roadmap. However, this interview does spread and shed some light on the situation that is at least a bit more positive, I guess. However, the grand scope of the thing still remains the same. But they do talk about the Ultra Realm here. And so they speak on the Ultra Realm. So Ultra Realm is an unknown area connected to a rift called Dimension Ripper that occurred in Alpha. The Arcs will be tasked with conducting an advanced investigation there. And so they say it's different from previous fields. Ultra Realm, which will be added in July, has a new format called the Intercept section. Just like the Exploration section, it is a field played by 32 people, but the rules is that everyone defeats the boss enemies that appear at regular intervals. Now, this is kind of an issue here, and I'll roll back to this real quick. I will read this a bit further, but I'll roll back to this a quick on kind of how this might be an issue. Do you enter Ultra Realm from the quest counter? They do say yes, that you do, just like Nameless City. The stamina of the bosses that appear in the field is quite high. But if you defeat the enemies in the field within a certain time or clear the trial, the boss's stamina will be reduced. Therefore, by playing well, even when there's no boss, the next boss that appears will have 70% or half the stamina. So you're fighting these weaker enemies, and it will decrease the stamina of the big boy boss. Now, they say down here that it's planned to be 8 minutes apart on when these bosses appear. So that's pretty nice. This creates a good little cycle there. But one of the issues I do see here immediately with this is on global side, because global side is much more prone to AFKers. Now, I don't know if this will actually be an issue, because I don't know if, killing the weaker mobs will actually drop stuff, if the stuff that they'll drop will be worthwhile, doing the trials will be worthwhile. If that is the case, then that does give incentive for people to not AFK, to continue to grind while they are trying to lower the stamina on the boss mob, right? However, if that's not the case, and they don't drop, worthwhile materials, then I think on global side, this can potentially end up being an issue where people are just standing there in these zones and waiting for the bosses to pop, or just standing in the zones, period. So that might pose an issue. This shouldn't be an issue on JP side, so I'm sure they didn't think about this. Usually this type of stuff is not an issue on JP side, unless you're on ship 2, which is the foreigner ship, so it doesn't count. It's just an extension of global side, for those who are wondering. So whenever I say JP side, it's everything excluding ship 2, of course. But this might be an issue. I don't know for sure, but nonetheless, I mean, other than that possibility, it seems kind of fun to do that. You kill the mobs, it lowers the stamina. Otherwise, the boss has super, super inflated HP, right? So that's cool, I guess. That's neat. And it also mentions here, for those of y'all who are wondering about the whole the cannon gameplay, the mobile cannons. The game allows you to defeat enemies in a dispersed manner just before the boss appears, or to defeat them efficiently using mobile cannons, etc., to reduce the boss's health and gain an advantage. So, for those who are wondering about mobile cannons, like they are optional. They're completely optional. However, they do use efficiently using mobile cannons. So that might be the preferred method. I don't know. But I know some people were kind of worried about, the whole, I don't want to use mobile cannons here, bro. Like, let me play my character, so I'm tired of the cannons. So I understand that. It just looks like it's going to be a bit, you can choose. So that's what it appears to like. Nonetheless, they're going to split Ultra Realm. This will be a combat section. So right now we're in a 32 player area, and then we're getting an combat section as well. So the Ultra Realm battle section will be added in September. As with previous battle sections, Hamazaki responds, it is a field where 8 people play. You can think of it as a battle section where you can play with new gimmicks and unique and trial additions. After the interception, where you cooperate with your allies to fight strong enemies, we will deliver the battle section as easy to play content so that users can enjoy the 2 ways of playing. In short, this is pretty much what's going to happen here. In short, this is like when Outer Realm, Stia came out, and everyone was kind of in there and fighting that boss, the big boss, the big robot boss, with Spawn. And then the combat sectors got updated very shortly after that, and then that became Dedge. No one was there because everyone's in the combat sectors. Probably that's the exact same thing that's going to happen here. Now, however, the only plus side here is that this is in September, and the 32 version comes out in July. So it does spread it out a bit further, whereas like at the Outer Realm, that was like a few weeks apart or something like that. So that's the plus side there. But that's more than likely what's going to happen there. It seems like they're just kind of, the new area is the Ultra Realm, so they keep building in the Ultra Realm. There's what they say, the dimensional rift or something, or whatever the hell they said. So that's kind of how that's going to work. Now down here, we get into some real interesting things with the EX style stuff and the skill ring stuff. So 4Gamer asks next, please tell us about the new action system, EX style, scheduled for October onwards. And Hamazaki responds, it is like a third class, after the subclass, and is positioned to expand the actions of your own weapon. For example, if you are a hunter, you can fight as your own character by performing an additional attack of EX style, while performing a sword action. Or you can use a special action linked to EX skill. or EX style, excuse me, after a photon blast. So your fighting style will change a little. So I did kind of, mention that before when we saw EX style. That kind of made me think of like, okay, so it's like you change your style a little bit, right? Capcom versus SNK or something like that, change your fighting style, right? So it did make me think of that. And that's what kind of appears to be there. So this appears a bit more interesting when they actually, kind of put some words into it and kind of talk about it a little bit. Feels a bit more interesting. So 4Gamer responds, it feels like an advanced option for the main class, but it's not like that. And Hamazaki responds, yes, it will be common to all classes, not specific to the current class. So we plan to have 3 types of EX styles. And we're thinking of having you choose from them according to your class and weapon. It's similar to a subclass because it is similar in that you have to think about combinations. So there will be 3 EX styles, and they will all operate in different manners, and it might benefit you in this way or that way, depending on what weapon or class you are using. So you will need to kind of focus on, which one is going to work best for the class that you're using. So this will add some further customization to really add to the gameplay. So that's a positive, that's a plus. And they say, will EX styles be a level system? This is also very good because it is a level system. It's not a specific item like the Mars Updater, but a system where you level up by 1 and earn 1 skill point when you accumulate a certain amount of experience points. It is adjusted so that you can reach a level where you can enjoy the minimum actions relatively quickly. So it should be an easy system to try. So this, I actually really like this because they're making it so that it gives you something to, kind of build towards, to work towards. It gives a point says, have a level up system with it. Now, however, probably will it follow the same route that everything NGS does? Probably. In that, well, they kind of, like, well, you can enjoy the minimum actions relatively quickly. Does that mean that the whole thing is going to be relatively easy to level up? You know what I'm saying? Like, am I going to be able to level this up in like 1 day to the max, pretty much? You feel me? That's the biggest issue there that I kind of have with that. While it seems fun and great on paper, they tend to make things extremely easy because there are a lot of lazy people who play the game. So I question how impactful this will be. And my guess is that it probably won't be super duper impactful in regards of breaking the loop, I guess, right? And then they have skill rings though. So skill rings also is a fairly neat addition as well that will add to the gameplay element of the game. So this also scheduled to be distributed after October. And Hamazaki says this is a system similar to the skill ring of PSO2 as a third equipment after weapons and armor. You will be able to equip 2 slots at the time of distribution. In PSO2, there were many skills that were tied to class skills, but in NGS, they are expanded to expand playstyles such as activates when evading, activates when PP is consumed, and activates when HP is kept at a certain amount. Even if the effect is the same, you can activate it in a way that suits your playstyle, so I think it's easier to use. So this is actually pretty neat. This adds another layer of equipment. So this is a plus. I mean, you can add in another slot, adding these rings is a plus in regards to, having more diversified gameplay. As you see, they can activate from different things here, such as HP or when invading, PP consume, so and so and so. So add some other new elements as well to enhance specific or varied play styles depending on the user, depending on the player, right? So I'm okay with that. That's okay. And 4Gamer says in PSO2, skill rings were made by collecting gathering materials. What will happen in NGS? And this time he says, Hamazaki says, this time it will drop directly as rings. So I'm kind of like, okay, in terms of probability, I think it will be set to require a certain amount of play, but since you can use it immediately after obtaining it, I think it will be easy to try out the effects. He does also say, however, if you get the same one, you can use it to strengthen the ring. This is good. You can use it to strengthen the ring, so it won't go to waste. However, how much can we strengthen it? How viable is this? How long can we do this? If we can continue strengthening it for a long time, that would be great. That will be an incentive to collect these rings to hopefully get them to drop. Then that would be good. But if it's just like, oh, it's just 3 levels, then it's like, okay, well, you get that fairly quickly, and then it's done. So there's some questions there, but I do like the ring system here and the EX styles. I think that's good for the gameplay aspects. So I think that's a great addition and will help out for sure with the gameplay for sure. And then if you remember on the roadmap, they mentioned another new field update, which is also planned for October or later, or after after October. And we did get some information on this. So they pretty much it's just upgrades to Ultra. That's pretty much what it is. So we plan to add new appearance motives, trials, and gimmicks in the interception and combat sections of Ultra. And we also plan to add new rules for Nemo City next year. So that's what that was with the field update. So nothing to really be excited about there. It's just some upgrades to Ultra Realm. And then the rest of this, they talk about some, some little tidbits of this and that. They talk about how EX style was kind of implemented in a way to focus on all the classes, of course, because they talk about how even when Slayer got released, 20% to 30% of the people at time of delivery even played the class. So they were decided to focus more so on everything, which is smart to do, of course. They talk about how some people only play, one or two classes, which is a lot of people appears to be. And then there's some people who level up all classes, of course. They also say that, they want you to play with many classes. I always tell you all this, to play with many classes. But, people are going to play in their own different ways, of course. I always say whenever you're playing games like these, try to play with everything. It's how the devs intended it to be played, not just be locked into one single way of gameplay when they have put so much time into, creating everything to work the way that they work. So that's always something to keep in mind when you're playing these games. And then lastly, down here, they talk about updates that are planned for next year and beyond that will allow new experiences to be enjoyed. So there are plans to add a lot of short episodes, but will there be any big stories in the future? Hamazaki responds, we are planning a story involving a new enemy in the Ultra Realm. It will take some time, but like the previous Val chapter, I think you will enjoy the story in a big chunk. Now, and this response right here pretty much is to me is just a real big emphasis on we're going to get more of the same, which we already kind of saw from the roadmap. This is going to be more of the same. Nothing to really be excited about here. We're going to keep getting drip fed this stuff. And ultimately, this is not going to be impactful for us. It's ultimately not. Plain and simple. It's not. It's not going to be enough. So that's kind of where all this is at down here. Then they just kind of talk about that. There's nothing that's really notable here in regards to the future here, allowing the new experiences. So there's really nothing. It's all that we knew. Things going to be drip fed. There's going to be some short stories here and there. Eventually there will be a big story, of course. Obviously, eventually there will be one, but there's nothing really here in that regard. So that pretty much about wraps up what I really want to address there. And then I just want to kind of note, as I said, I will bring it back around at the end, that ultimately with all this stuff, even with the EX style, the rings, the skill rings, the Ultra Realm, ultimately it's not enough. I responded to a comment on one of my videos the other day, and we were discussing. I like to have discussions in my comments, of course. So I said, ultimately, yeah, it's not enough. As long as we are on Alpha, nothing that the game does will be enough. Period. Because we are in year 4. We're in year 4, so as a result, as long as we are on Alpha, you can keep releasing these things and they will be fun, initially when it happens, and we will enjoy them, the people who play the game. Of course, there's a fluctuating and dwindling player base, of course, but of course, we will enjoy these things briefly when they come out. But ultimately, the reason why you're not going to retain, or it's going to be very difficult to retain, is because we're still on Alpha. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when you play this stuff, when you run this stuff, you run this new stuff, you go to Ultra Realm or whatnot, and then you go back to the city and you're reminded you're still on Alpha. You play an Ultra Realm, you go and run an urgent quest, you go and do this, and you go back to Aleo City or Redham City or Stia Camp or Kavaris Camp, and you're reminded you're still on Alpha. And as long as you are constantly reminded that you are still on Alpha in this game, nothing will ever ultimately be able to make it improve. We need to be off Alpha. That's the all say tell all conclusion that has to be accepted. Like, it doesn't matter what goes on here. Like I said, I'm excited for some of this stuff, to play it for the brief amount of time that we play it. It'll be enjoyable, and then it gets just undermined anyway. But ultimately, the fact of the matter is that we're on alpha still, and it's 4 years in. So that's the issue. That's the big issue. Until that issue is addressed, ultimately um, nothing is going to actually be improved. So, at any rate, y'all, this was the interview. I wanted to touch on this. Figured I'd let y'all know about it. So this is from 4Gamers. This will be linked in the description in case you want to read the entire thing. Like I said, I was not going to go over the entire thing because there was no reason for me to. Y'all can read some of the other stuff. It's just really just much like recapping. Nothing. I went over the most interesting stuff, the most important stuff for y'all. So you're welcome. Save y'all some time. But at any rate, much love, y'all. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you think about this whole situation, about the updates, about the how they kind of define and describe the EX skills and the skill rings and whatnot, how they're going to operate and all that stuff and all that jazz, and what you think about the roadmap and everything. So let me know down in the comments below. I will see you on the next one. Much love. Holla.
Spike content.